Dollar. Dirt and money, no soul. Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack and flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from my problems.
Yo, what's good, original crew, man? We're back. Hey, we got Mr. Ballen in the building today. Ballen! No echoes. Alright. Today's video, they discover pure nightmare fuel in the wilderness. No echoes. Let's try to get her to play along, y'all. That's all. Just try to get her.
But you was past that. Why we go back to it?
When I did that,
Ballen.
No,
Okay. Okay, well, you don't want
it.
it.
Ain't hitting the sound.
Okay, well, then. I don't know what you want from me.
Hey, make sure y'all check out the links in the description box.
Down below.
You already know where to go. If you want the first part, you got to do it. Check out down below. Also, if you enjoyed today's video,
lock it in with a thumbs up.
Man, let's get it. Let's check it out. Let's see what's about. You ready?
Alrighty.
In today's episode, I'm going to tell you two stories. The first story you're going to hear is about this village in Africa where people keep turning up dead and nobody knows why until they do a stakeout. And the second and final story you'll hear is about this remote island in the Arctic region of northern Canada where these indigenous hunters make a truly disturbing discovery. But before we get into today's stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do and we upload once a week. So if that's of interest to you, please offer to do the like button's grocery shopping, but don't tell them you've squirted an entire bottle of lime juice into their fresh milk. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's stories. In the middle of the night on March 7th, 2005, a 64-year-old man named John Mangine crouched in the bushes in his little village in Uganda. Several of John's friends and neighbors were also crouching in bushes nearby, and everyone was being totally silent, constantly scanning the area, looking for movement. But so far, nothing had happened, and everyone was totally exhausted and terrified. So John had been around for a long time. He had 9 kids, 31 grandkids, and he remembered a time that was not even that long ago when this village was a happy, bustling place where, families and kids could play in harmony and everyone felt safe. But that all changed 14 years earlier in 1991. Because starting in that year, people in this village started dying. Or more specifically, people in this village started getting killed by someone. They didn't know. It was like randomly people would just go missing and then turn up horribly mutilated and deceased, or people just vanished and were never seen again. Over the course of these 14 years, 83 people from this village had been killed and nobody knew why. And 83 people, to put this in perspective, represented 10% of this entire village's population. This was so widespread that everybody in John's village personally knew someone who had been killed by whatever was plaguing this village. And at some point, the people in this village began to think that clearly a demon is responsible for this. I mean, this is so pervasive that this can't be an animal or a person. This is like, God's will or something, or this is, the devil's will. We don't know, but it's supernatural. Like, we can't control this. It just is a part of living here. And so literally this village, the people here, had just grown to accept that, sometimes people just turn up mutilated and dead. There's nothing we can do about it. We just got to live with it. But John, he personally knew several people who had been killed, and he never took the stance of, well, it's supernatural and we can't do anything about it. John's like, no, we need to look into this. There's gotta be an actual explanation for what's happening here. And so finally, in 2005, the tipping point was a little boy went missing in the village one morning. And for John, he has all these grandkids, including a bunch of little boys, and he saw this little boy go missing and, he was never found again. And John's thinking, that's just like one of my grandkids. This has to stop. We gotta look now. We have to look into this now. And so John very forcefully rounded up some people in the village, his friends and neighbors and others, and he told them, tonight we are going to set up a stakeout and stay out all night if we have to, and wait for this demon, this creature, this person, whoever it is. We are going to catch them in the act and put an end to this thing. And because John was so motivated, so enthusiastic, and so ready to sort of lead this thing, he really quickly turned the tide of people's opinions in this village. It's like they went from being, oh, we can't do anything about it, to, you know what, yeah, let's put an end to this thing. And so sure enough, that night, John and all these people he had got together for this stakeout, they headed to this area in their village called the Butchery. They had named it that because the majority of the 83 people who had been killed and mutilated and, turned up dead, they were either found roughly in that area, or that's where they were last seen before they vanished. And the butchery was actually basically right next to this lake, this placid lake that sort of sat right next to the village. So everybody's scared of this lake and this area, but tonight's the night. They're gonna figure out what's happening in this village. And so John and the other volunteers, they make their way over to the butchery, and they each climb into these tall bushes, these reeds that are right next to the lake, and they all crouch down, kind of keeping their eyes on the land, the butchery, and also the lake. And there they sat. All of them constantly looking at each other, maintaining eye contact, to stay safe. And they're looking at each other, they're looking at the water, the black water that's totally still, and there's nothing on land, it's still, it's silent. And for hours, they just sat there nervously watching, waiting for something to happen. They didn't know what it was gonna be. They didn't know if, one of the volunteers in the stakeout was suddenly gonna be ripped away by this demon or whatever it was. But all night, on this first night of the stakeout, they're waiting and watching on edge, and nothing happens. And so John the next morning says, we've got to do it again. We got to go back out there and do another stakeout because we know there's something out there. And so sure enough, night 2 rolls around, and now they have even more volunteers. They're motivated, they're out there in the bushes, waiting, watching the lake, watching the land, but nothing happens again. And this cycle continues for 4 more days where nothing happens. John is rallying people every night to keep going back out there, but the group is getting more and more tired. I mean, they're staying out all night. It's also sort of deflating to realize that, it looks like we don't have control over whatever's happening here. Like, we can't catch this thing. We don't even know what it is. And so after 6 days of this, where they have seen nothing, no one's been taken, no one's been killed, it's been totally quiet in the village, John rallies the people one more time. He goes, one more night, give me one more, I know we're gonna catch something. And so he got the village to kind of agree to go out for one more night. And this night, unlike the others, John decided to do something different to try to sort of entice, whatever this creature or person or whoever it was, whatever it was, to entice them out of hiding. He and the villagers strung up all this organ meat in the trees right near the butchery, believing that, whoever was killing these people was seeking their meat. And so they put meat up in the trees. And so that night, the 7th night, John and the others, after putting their organ meat in the trees, they crouch down in the bushes, waiting and watching, and it's silent and it's dark. And at first, nothing happens. And as the night goes on, people are starting to think, it's just another night where nothing's gonna happen. And people are starting to get restless, and John's telling them, be quiet, stay still, we gotta wait, we gotta watch, see what happens. Hours and hours go by, nothing. But then, between 4 or 5 in the morning, it's still dark out, the water's black, it's still and silent, and people are really starting to get restless at this point. They begin to hear something. It's like this low grumbling sound that appears to be coming from the lake, but it's hard to tell. The lake was pretty big and it was still dark out. They're looking out at the water and it's just dark, and they're right near the water. And so they're hearing this rumbling sound, and everyone's kind of looking out like this is the first time anything has happened during one of these stakeouts. And John, he's telling them, stay down, stay quiet. And they're looking out at the water, and it's still. But this rumbling, growling sound, it starts getting louder and louder and louder. It's so loud at a certain point that John, he can feel his body literally trembling from the sound. And as that begins to happen, even with the minimal light, they're looking out at the black water, and they notice ripples on the surface of the water. Something's moving in the lake. And so everybody's looking and waiting, everyone's scared. John looks over at the other people who are in the other set of bushes right near him, and he can see their eyes are wide, they're terrified, but everyone's looking out at the water. And then eventually this massive, dark silhouette emerges from the lake, and this loud growl fills the air, and everyone's frozen, and then whatever it is charges towards John. but it doesn't go after John. This huge creature runs past John and bites down on the meat dangling from the trees. But the meat, they had placed hooks in the meat like a trap. And as soon as this thing bit onto the meat, it got snared in one of the traps and it couldn't move. And John, who had been waiting for this moment, even though he has no idea what's happened here, he knew he needed backup. And so he got up and sprinted into the village and began screaming for everyone to come out here and help us. And so 50 villagers came pouring out of their homes and they all descended on the tree with all the organ meat and this huge creature dangling and thrashing from the trap. And they suddenly realized that what had been plaguing their village was not a demon. It was instead the largest saltwater crocodile ever found in Uganda. This crocodile was 16 feet long, over 2,000 pounds. I mean, this thing is massive. And for 14 years, this crocodile had been sneaking into the village, grabbing people, and dragging them back to the lake. And nobody had seen it. Or more specifically, anyone who had seen this crocodile, this beast, did not live to tell the tale. Authorities were quickly called to the village, and they wouldn't allow the villagers to kill this crocodile as much as they wanted to. Instead, the crocodile was relocated.
Nigga, we killing that. He a danger.
Relocated.
Man, you talking about relocate, man? How many people has it killed?
A lot.
83? No. Put that. You see how massive that motherfucker is, bro?
Relocate.
Man, that motherfucker had a good life. He got beat out for 83 people.
Okay.
That shit is insane.
Where y'all relocated to? For real.
I mean, damn, bro. I ain't never seen one that big.
I don't think I have.
For 14 years,
No.
but also you got to think about it. It wasn't a baby either. I mean, since 91, yeah, for 14 years, it wasn't a baby. It was actually grown enough to go and grab them.
Oh.
So you got to think, like, how long has this motherfucker really been out there?
Facts.
That's scary, bro.
Very much so.
I don't see how people in Florida do it.
Oh.
I don't see how they be doing it, bro. I can. But people probably say about us with like different animals we got. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, they don't bother nobody. They probably like, they don't bother nobody either. You got nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Instead, the crocodile was relocated. One morning in April of 1848, a group of men were walking towards the coast of King William Island, which is an island located in the freezing Arctic region of northern Canada. These men were members of the Inuit people, who are indigenous to King William Island. And today, they were going hunting. Specifically, they were making their way towards the coastline to see if they could find any seals that they could hunt and kill for food and for clothing. However, even though technically the coastline was right in front of them, they couldn't actually see the water, because there was this huge icy hill that obstructed their view. So in order to look down to the water, they would have to crest that hill and then look down. As these hunters got closer to the hill, the youngest of the hunters broke from the group and ran up the hill to basically get an early look over and see if he could spot any animals down below. However, as soon as he crested the hill and scanned the coastline, again, you got a picture, it's snowy, icy outside, it's below 0 degrees. I mean, you're in the Arctic wild here. He's looking down and at first, all he sees is just white, just snow, ice. But he sees something else. And as he's looking at it, he can't even understand what he's seeing. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's not computing. And so at this point, the young hunter kind of ducked down on this side of the hill, kind of away and out of view of the ocean. And he turned and signaled to the other hunters to get up here and take a look. And so the other hunters, they don't really understand what's happening here, but they can see, there's some urgency coming from this young hunter. And so they run up the hill as well. And all together, all at once, they kind of peer up and over the hill again, and they look down, and for a second, they all just stared in horrified silence. Down below, wandering along the coastline, were not seals or walruses or any other animals that these hunters might have expected to see out here. Instead, they saw people. Specifically, they saw kalunat, which is their word for white men. But these men were not acting like people. They were lumbering, almost like they weren't in control of their bodies. They had these strange, jerky movements, and they were all just kind of staring straight ahead with these vacant expressions. And their skin, it was like black and blue, and their clothes were tattered, and they were just kind of lumbering along, about 40 of these kalunat, these white men. Now, for these hunters, I mean, they really didn't have much exposure or experience around kalunat, around white men. I mean, all they really knew at the time and in this part of the world is that white men were pretty dangerous to the indigenous people. But they did know there was a group of kalunat who were staying on a ship that was off the coast of King William Island, and they had been living there for the better part of a year, and it seemed like their ship might have frozen off the coast, and they were just kind of trapped until the warmer months came around and they could sail away. But to this point, the Inuit people really had not seen or interacted with any of those white people. They had just kind of kept to themselves, and that was it. So just to see the kalunat, the white people, on land, that alone was really shocking. Like, what happened? Why did they leave their ship? Why are they here? But again, the way they were moving and how they looked, it seemed wrong. Like there was something wrong with these people. Like there's more to this story than the Inuit people understand. And it was sort of terrifying. And on top of just the way they were moving, there was something else these kalunat were doing. In addition to these men just kind of lumbering along the coastline, a few of them were dragging this big sled. And there was a tarp over the sled. Clearly something big or several things were under this tarp. But the Inuit hunters, they couldn't quite tell what it was. It was covered up. And so they're just watching these men in this weird parade along the coastline with the sled. And they really were like, we have to get out of here. And so they ducked their heads below the icy hill to kind of stay out of view of the kalunat, who to this point, it did not seem like they had spotted the hunters. And as the hunters are sort of trying to figure out what they should even do, they hear this awful guttural scream coming from down below where these men are, where these white men are. And instinctively, the hunters, they grab their spears and they poke their head up over the hill, almost thinking maybe they've spotted us, maybe they're gonna attack us. But no, when they look down below, many of the kalunat were still just kind of lumbering along, but one of them had stopped and he was kind of retching around like there was something wrong with him, and he continued to scream out, and then he just crumpled to the ground. But the other white men, it was like they didn't even react to it, except for the men pulling the sled. They pulled the sled right up alongside this man who had just fallen to the ground after screaming, and they just sort of nonchalantly pulled back the tarp, revealing all sorts of bodies on the sled. They picked the guy who had just fallen, and they threw him onto the pile. They covered him back up with the tarp, and then, like nothing had happened, the men kept on pulling the sled, and this totally creepy procession continued down the coast. At this point, the Inuit hunters were genuinely terrified, and without saying anything, they just scrambled back down the hill and ran back to their village. The following day, the Inuit hunters came back to that exact spot, that icy hill that looked down to the ocean below. Except this time, they had brought along several pounds of seal meat. So the previous day, when these hunters had gone back to their village to tell the others about what they had just seen, oddly enough, the consensus became that, of course the kalunat are sort of dangerous to us and we should keep our distance. But from what you're describing, it sounds an awful lot like these men, these white men, must just be starving. Like the way they're moving, the fact that men are falling down and dying, and they have this, sled full of dead bodies. They're out here in the Arctic wild. I mean, this is a very unforgiving place. And so the consensus was, they're starving to death. That's what you're seeing. That's why they're acting the way they are. And so maybe the move here is you hunters go back to that same spot, try to find these kalunat, and give them some food, not only to help them, to be good people, good stewards of humanity, but also as sort of like a peace offering, because there was tension between the Inuit people and the kalunat. And so these hunters had agreed. They had showed up with the intention of, finding these 40 some odd white men, giving them some food, and maybe even offering some help, if they needed it. And so that day, the Inuit hunters, they make it back to their spot, they climb up that icy hill, and they look down towards the ocean below, and there's nobody there. It's just complete isolation. And so the hunters, they go down to the coastline and they see footprints from the day before. They find, the tracks from the sled that have been being dragged. and they just start tracking the footprints of these white men. And for hours, these hunters are just following the footprints along this coastline, in the snow and the ice, and they're looking up ahead. They don't see anybody, and it's like, wow, like these guys, they covered a huge amount of ground. Like, where did they go? And eventually, after hours of this, the hunters come upon this campsite, but it's totally abandoned. It's right on the edge of the water, and based on where the campsite was and sort of how fresh it looked, it seemed pretty obvious that at some point, clearly the Kalunat had been camped out here, but they clearly are not here now. But interestingly, the people that had been here, presumably the white men, they had left behind quite a few of their supplies. Like there was the remains of a fire, and sitting over the fire was this big pot, like a metal pot. And you would think if you're struggling to survive out here that you would definitely want to keep some of your cooking supplies, but no, that was left behind along with several other tools. And so the Inuit hunters, they're looking around thinking, okay, well, maybe they just stepped away and they're going to come back. But they searched the vicinity of the campsite, but nobody was there. The footprints just kind of picked up and continued off into the distance. And so feeling pretty puzzled by this, the Inuit hunters decided to just search the campsite and try to get some clue as to what's going on with these white men. And eventually, after searching through all the different things that had been left behind, they came back to that fire and that pot that had a lid over it that was sitting right there. And one of the hunters walks up to the pot, he grabs the lid, he lifts it off, and when he saw what was inside, he reeled back in horror. Several months later, that same group of Inuit hunters had hiked miles and miles down that same coastline of King William Island until they saw off in the distance, right off the coast, this big wooden ship. And these hunters knew this ship belonged to the Kalunat. And today, their plan was to break into the ship and raid it, because just recently, these hunters had finally kind of solved the mystery of what happened to those, 40 some odd white men they had seen. Because they came across this mass gravesite, of like 30 plus white men all dead in the snow. And clearly they had starved to death and died from exposure. And so it just sort of seemed like this unfortunate thing that these guys had hiked and hiked and hiked and just kind of fell down and died. But now that the Inuit hunters knew that all these white men were dead, they're like, well, there's a ship sitting right out there that, no one's gonna claim, so why don't we take whatever's inside of it? And so the Inuit hunters walked out onto the ocean, which was completely frozen. So the ship, it's off the coast, but it's basically a pathway of ice right up to the ship. And so the hunters, they walked on this ice all the way out to the ship. And when they got there, unsurprisingly, it was totally vacant. It's silent, it's still, clearly there's nobody in this ship. Now, as the Inuit hunters climbed the side of the ship and got ready to go inside, they all had set their expectations to be like, okay, clearly the men who had inhabited this ship at one point, the white men, the Kalunat, they obviously abandoned the ship and, tried their luck on land unsuccessfully. So clearly something must have happened out here. Like they ran out of food, or there was a leak in the ship, or some sort of chaos ensued here that caused them to abandon their shelter and, head towards the Arctic wilds, right? But once they got on board the ship and looked around, they quickly realized the ship was in pristine condition. I mean, there was no damage to the ship. It was practically brand new, preserved out in the ice here. When they went down below, they discovered there were all these bedrooms with these incredibly comfortable looking beds, and there was bunk beds and hammocks with linens and pillows. There was a library with hundreds of books. There were games. There was all this cutlery and fine china. And just off the kitchen, in their pantry, was this massive food storage room full of food. Canned goods, all still good, that apparently had just been left behind. And so the Inuit hunters, they're thinking like, how is this possible? What caused these white men to abandon their ship, which presumably was perfect, pristine, provided much better shelter, and also they abandoned all their food, like they clearly weren't starving. So what happened? What caused them to go on land and die horrible deaths? Well, the reason for this would not fully make sense for another 130 years, because it was in the 1980s when researchers actually began to analyze the remains of these white men, those 30, 40 white men who were found dead on King William Island. It would turn out those men were explorers who had been sent out to the Arctic by the British government. And they had been well outfitted when they were sent out on their journey. I mean, they were given that incredible ship, and they were given all these supplies, including a whole bunch of canned food items. However, what these explorers didn't know is that their canned food had become tainted with lead. And so as they slowly were eating all these canned food items, they were slowly poisoning themselves. And one of the side effects of lead poisoning, in addition to feeling nauseous and horribly sick, is it drives you crazy. It basically gives you these wild mood swings. And so like the whole ship, all these men are undergoing these totally insane mood swings and basically falling into actual mental hysteria out on this ship. And so in their hysterics, all these men decide to abandon their ship and head into the Arctic wild to forage for food and who knows what. I mean, they literally were out of their minds. And when they got to land into the wilderness, they didn't find food, they didn't find shelter, they found death and misery. And as they devolved into insanity and men began falling down and dying, because they were starving to death, they began eating their brothers. They began eating the dead men. That sled they were dragging along was not to preserve the bodies to give them a proper burial down the road. It was like their mobile refrigeration unit. They were dragging those bodies along and then eating them. And so the reason those Inuit hunters were so horrified when they discovered that campsite and they looked inside of that pot, well, it's because inside of the pot was clearly a human skull, and that skull had been cracked open as if whoever was tending this pot had literally been scooping in and basically eating this person's brain. To this day, bones of the crew members of that failed expedition are still being found on King William Island.
Oh. Wow.
Whoa, what the complete fuck?
Thank you so much.
That is a crazy. Now that's crazy, bro.
Yeah. That was.
Cause I'm like, at first I'm like, what did the boy see? And I'm like, all right, he probably saw this, he probably saw that. And I'm like, nah.
Like, what could possibly be wrong with them?
Yeah.
And now where they, you know what I'm saying? Just
And
like,
I did think of disease, but I'm like, maybe it's a disease that they traveled here to the island with, and then now they trapped. But I never thought about lead poisoning though.
Yeah.
That never crossed my mind, it makes sense though.
But no, it didn't cross my mind either.
That's insane, see.
I think you just like, oh, got another one. Just throw them on the.
That's scary.
Yes, it really is.
Like, but I ain't gonna hold you in a situation like that. What do you do besides what they did?
I mean,
It's
I think
by
with
trying to survive,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I know you
Yeah,
like you think
yeah.
about it like ugh, like
Yeah.
and some people like ain't no way in hell I would ever do that. But if push came to shove, you would, because you was trying your best to stay alive. Because I know you like ain't no way in
I'm like,
hell.
at this point, is it worth staying alive?
Like you try to stay alive as much as you can so you go back home. But honestly, if they even had survived through all that, right, and got back on the boat and sailed back, they were gonna eat the food. Then also I'm thinking, all right, y'all eating their body, eating their brain, because he said the skull had been cracked open. So you're eating the brains. You're still consuming the poisoning that they.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, you got to think about this too. What would have happened if they even had came encounter with the people? Would they have now became aggressive and tried to attack them?
True. Especially them, like the people knowing the circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
But
no, I'm talking about before. I'm saying like when they went back to try to get them the food. What if they had?
Well, what I'm saying is like the white men, they know what situation they in, so they desperate at this point.
Do they know? Oh,
I said the white men.
I'm saying like what you mean by situation they
like
in?
they know that they don't have no food. They know they food poison. They know that they
don't. They probably don't know.
Okay,
well
they may not know the food poison, but they know something is happening. Something is going on.
They probably don't because they just in hysteria. They're mentally like.
Even the ones that's like picking the bodies up and
because like you said with the lead poisoning, like it's making them hallucinate.
I wonder
things.
was every single part. Well, I don't know. You wouldn't know.
But also, if every single person is not lead poisoned, why is every single person off the boat?
True.
Think about that part. You get what I mean?
I'm thinking.
I know you tired as well. So
I'm thinking, but I'm not. I don't know.
Cause I'm like, ain't nobody on the boat. Everybody got out the boat. So at that point, everybody gotta be.
Yeah.
If I'm not in there, y'all can go. I'm gonna stay.
But stay and do what?
In the warm.
Just stay warm, but starve to death.
Eat some more food.
What food?
But they also.
Oh, you saying because they didn't know? I don't know.
Also, they probably at that time they don't have the knowledge like we have now. The reason why we have knowledge now is because of things people went through. They probably didn't even know anything about lead poisoning at that time.
Yeah, I get.
Because
if
that was the case, why put
I guess,
in lead
okay,
cans?
well, I stay warm, but poison myself. I know that they didn't know that they poisoned themselves, but at least I'll be warm, poisoning myself. I guess if you want to say that,
it still got food support.
I have somewhere to.
Because also, I'm thinking, did the Inuit people did they try to harvest some of the food?
I did wonder that, like when they see, like, oh my gosh, like y'all, this boat. I mean, what this ship?
Because I'm sure they raided
like,
the.
Y'all just left this here. I do wonder if they did.
Because I'm sure they raided and took some of it back.
I do want to know that. Like I was thinking, I was like, oh well.
Or do they look at not to consume food
maybe
that they not?
Because a lot of times, like.
People,
you're hunters, you know what I'm saying?
I don't consume food that I didn't go out here and hunt and kill myself.
Yeah.
Also because our diet is different too.
Yeah.
So we can't consume everything.
Maybe not. I would hope not. But yeah.
Yeah, because that would have spread it back into their village.
I know. Yeah. I am tired. I can't think straight.
Hey man, y'all spam us up in the comments, man.
Please
Let us know
do.
y'all thoughts about it for us in the comment section down below. But until next time. Y'all know how it go, man. I do go by the name DJ New Kid. This is. We are. We out.
Go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my foes. Dollar, 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 dollar.